if we were going to do this for the broader housing market, how would we use these panels in the best way possible to keep them affordable? We felt that the 3-story walk-up typology had the broadest reach. It's a very affordable development. We're actually using a hybrid system, which we think is more cost-effective. And then we combine that with modular bathrooms and kitchens. What we want to give you is the system. Our unit costs will come down as more people use our kit. We'll have a complete data set that we can publish. And in fact, if developers want to reach out, we're happy to share right now.
This is the Mass Timber Group Show. I'm Nick.
And I'm Brady, and we talk to sustainable building experts. Today we caught up with Fouad Khalil, the principal of Modly, an industrialized construction consultancy providing market research, feasibility analysis, and advisory services to the building and real estate sector.
Fu has over 20 years of experience as a designer, a manager, and a technologist. He's working on game-changing, affordable mass timber concepts that will be used by developers nationwide.
But before we jump in, if you want to learn more about building multifamily mass timber buildings and meet other teams doing the same thing, we're hosting the second annual Mass Timber Group Summit this August in Denver. We've got 30 plus sessions, 3 amazing networking parties, and building tours of the coolest projects in Denver. Check out the link in the show notes below for more info. And if you like these podcasts, subscribing to the channel is the biggest compliment you can give us. It helps us book incredible guests like Fu and brings more mass timber awareness to the rest of the world. So with that, let's get into it.
Modly is an industrialized construction consultancy. What I mean by industrialized construction is it's essentially taking manufacturing techniques, building sections of building under roof in a controlled environment and getting them to site. And we work with producers of industrialized construction products like CLT, for example. We also work with product designers. So we do product design on various kinds of building products like that. And we also help buyers, purchasers of this, figure out, what product makes sense for them, whether they should invest in a manufacturing operation, strategy and market study, market research on industrialized. And that really varies from I2 non-combustible construction types to wood framed. Really we span the gamut on that.
Got it. And how did you first get into like CLT, the mass timber world? Like how did you go from these different systems into this bio-based material?
Yeah. So I started out, I'm an architect by training, and got interested in kind of components really from school. It's kind of always been an interest of mine in terms of like thinking about, a higher finish component and how that could actually enhance the architecture. And then in 2008, I did a modular project for HUD in Alabama, very, very low cost housing for seniors. We started working with a fabrication facility that did trailer homes. And we basically helped them tool the trailer home to stack 3 high and built a multifamily development for kind of a subsidized housing units for seniors, about $120 a foot back then. Ultra low cost. We were really excited about it. And we learned a lot. And those learnings ended up feeding back into the firm I was at. And that firm started a company called Blocks. BLOX, which now serves the medical market and does really the gamut of industrialized construction. So they'll do everything from panels to modules to components. In 2012, I moved to Sweden. And in Sweden, I was working at a firm called White Architecture. I was a creative director there. And we did a pretty big CLT project as CLT was really coming on strong in the Nordic market. And we worked with the Lithuanian CLT fabricator there and helped introduce CLT into that the Swedish market specifically. And then in 17, I was asked to come back and be the design director of Block. So I came back in and did more industrialized construction. And I've really stayed there because I think there's so much potential for the building industry to use manufacturing to really, address affordability, labor shortages, cost, all of the things that are kind of, are urgent needs in construction right now. And in 2020, just before COVID, I went out on my own and launched Modly as a consultancy to kind of help bring that about. So that's been my journey, and right now we're very excited about a CLT program we're launching in Northwest Arkansas for a company called Blue Crane, and working on bringing more affordable and market rate how sustainable housing units using CLT to the broader market in Northwest Arkansas and hopefully beyond. And
And that,
we ended up winning the mass timber competition last year with that effort.
for those that don't know, can you kind of unpack what that competition was, what they were awarded, what was awarded to this project, and what that means for you guys moving forward?
Yeah, yeah. So that project, or that competition is a grant. I think it's set up by the Softwood Lumber Board, and I think some of the funding comes through the forestry department. And they are trying to find ways to spur the broader adoption of CLT in the market. This year, they really had this focus on trying to, we talk about the missing middle as one concept, but how do you get this amazing new? It's an old technology, but a new technology. How can you get this into the broader market and spur adoption? And that was actually exactly what we were trying to do in Northwest Arkansas. Northwest Arkansas is a very rapidly growing region. It has a lot of ambition. There are a number of Fortune 100 companies in that area, and they really want to build it up, but they want to do so sustainably, or at least my client does. And so we've been working together on using CLT as an important component in a kit of parts that really any developer can use, and they've been really wonderful in being open and sharing, being willing to share their findings with other developers broadly. And that's where we were able to submit for the mass timber competition because we were already kind of working on the same problem.
And the owner and the developer of Blue Crane is wildly impressive. I gotta say, can you speak a little bit further about the kind of the Walmart family and the Walton connection to Blue Crane, and maybe even how do you land somebody on that scale?
That was just, yeah, that was just sheer luck. But yeah, Tom and Stu Walton are the owners of Blue Crane. Um, Actually, we started working with them and with Alice Walton. If you're at all familiar with the uh, Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, which is
Yeah.
this fantastic building in Northwest Arkansas in Bentonville, really has some of the most amazing art in the country. It's actually an amazing experiences. There are trails around it. There's water. There's a ton of fantastic glue lamb used throughout the project. So if you're a wood construction fan, it's a great facility to go. Great for the family. It's very
Yeah.
affordable. And they wanted to develop some housing for the museum. And the as you know, Moshe Safdie was the architect there. Seminal figure in the development of prefabricated and modular construction, Habitat 67, of course. And so they were looking at ways to use CLT for additional construction around the Blue Crane around the Crystal Bridges complex. But then Tom and Stu Walton also wanted to apply that to the affordable market rate market in Blue Crane. And Blue Crane's very unique in that they're trying to address a middle market, but they're very focused on design and they're very focused on sustainability. And so we found really that the CLT application that we landed on was the most ideal for that segment. And that's what we're actually engaged in our first pilot project, which is Project Via. It'll start construction here in late spring. and that will be our first test bed for this method. And we will, the plan is to share our findings through the grant and through other ways of communicating with other developers to use our kit, and hopefully get more people using it. The more people use it, the cheaper it gets for everybody, really.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the Crystal Bridges Museum. So Nick and I went to the International Mass Timber Conference together in 2022. And I actually had to leave a day early to go to a wedding in Northwest Arkansas,
Oh,
just,
great.
like 30 minutes away from Crystal Bridges. And when we went to the museum, my wife and the people that we're with are looking at all the wonderful artwork out there. And I'm looking up, I'm like, that's some
That's
great
right.
glulam up there. And I was, nerding out because I just come back from the conference and I was like, you guys don't understand. Like this building material is going to be everywhere. Like fast forward a decade. So that's like a super fun connection into there. And I'm excited to see what they do with housing around in that area. But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
project Via, how big is that going to be?
Project Via, we have about 75 units in terms of our industrialized construction kit that uses CLT. We have basically, we wanted to address it by typology. And Via has 4 buildings. 2 of the buildings will be a test bed. We'll use as the kit, and then 2 of the buildings will build conventional.
Got it.
But we felt that the 3-story walk-up typology was potentially, had the broadest reach. If you think about 3-story walk-up, that's everything from garden style, urban infill, doesn't require an elevator. So it's a very affordable development for both the developer and hopefully the user as well. And it helped us limit the risk. When you get into podium construction, now you've got a concrete podium to kind of work out, plus the CLT on top. So we just wanted to make this as simple as possible to start with, but we anticipate we will include other typologies. For example, student housing is something we're interested in looking at. Um, Podium construction, obviously, and there are many other types of housing, high rise, mid rise, et cetera, that we would look at. But we want to go one typology at a time and be as systematic as we can. So as we release information, people working on developments in that typology can hopefully just go straight ahead, and they're not waiting for more data.
I'm reading the Modly description on your LinkedIn, and I hope
Hmm.
everyone can go there and follow along. It sounds like that's mostly where you're telling people what's been going on with Modly and all your kind of future announcements and everything. But it's self described as Modly provides market research, feasibility analysis, and advisory services for modular and offsite construction. So, what were you in charge of for that project there specifically?
At VIA?
Yes.
Yes, sure. So I kind of worked almost as we can start at the beginning. The first part was really putting a strategy together to use this material. As you know, you may also be aware of the Walmart home office,
Hmm.
uh,
Yes.
which is a huge
Massive.
milestone, yeah, in mass timber, right?
Mhm.
So we were working just as that project was rearing up, and the question was, we have a brand new production facility in Conway, Arkansas. That's new investment in the state of Arkansas for CLT processing. Um, Southern yellow pine, they were just figuring out the engineering on the southern yellow pine um, uh, feedstock for CLT. That's kind of new, but it's very exciting because we have so much southern yellow pine in the southeast, and we also, this is kind of new and really great for the southeast. We have 2 facilities in the southeast, right? We have the plant in Conway. We have also the plant in Dothan. Both have very robust CLT lines using southern yellow pine. So we were really excited about how to, uh, you know, um, use this local resource. It's a very high tech product. It has a lot of value add in it. Um, and it's a great story from an economic standpoint, from a sustainability standpoint, from a development standpoint. So how do we get this actually into the broader market? And we started working with the Conway plant in terms of research and feasibility for the strategy. So, if we were going to do this for the broader housing market, how would we use these panels in the best way possible to keep them affordable? That's really where we started. Uh, my role was to vet the architecture and do a lot of pre-planning so that when the architecture team came on board, we had everything ready for them, ready to go. And we did not use an all CLT construction. We're actually using a hybrid system, which we think is more cost effective. And so it was really vetting that system before we got into the pilot project, which required a lot of coordination between various vendors, getting pricing, figuring out, what the strategy was and so on. And then once we had approval, we went ahead and did started working on the first pilot.
So, two-part question. What type of hybrid systems are you using for CLT? And then what have you learned so far that other developers in their early stage due diligence can learn from?
So if you right now in these kind of middle markets, southeastern markets, Midwest, and you're thinking about doing.
Hey, we're going to get back to the podcast in just a second. But first, I have a question for you. Are you somebody looking to build a mass timber project? If the answer is yes, then you need to put together an experienced team.
Our partners at Cornerstone Timber Frames are leaders in heavy timber construction and have 30 plus years of experience, which means you can trust them to get the job done right.
They collaborate with Nordic Structures to bring you the highest quality FSC certified mass timber available. They also have some of the most advanced fabrication technology in the industry, so your project goes up smoothly without costly on-site modification or delays.
That means they have the experience, network, and technology to make your next mass timber project a success. Learn more about Cornerstone Timber Frames by clicking the link in the show notes below.
CLT still at a slight premium, but keeping that premium as affordable as you can or as minimal as you can. You're probably interested in some part of the sustainability aspect of CLT. Maybe it's a selling point. You have a warm, rich, beautiful interior. You see that wood on the ceiling. That really gives some character to the units that the gyp ceiling just doesn't. So there are these value adds that we wanted to take advantage of. But if you built the entire building out of CLT and glulam, you were basically going to get priced out. That's a luxury structure, really, in the markets we're talking about. So hybrid construction is really the way we thought made the most sense. And that involves using CLT primarily as the floor deck and roof. So we have CLT panels at the floor deck and roof, load bearing, stick framed or panelized walls, but basically the loads are coming down through the walls. And then we combine that with modular bathrooms and kitchens that we were sourcing centrally. So you're really trying to leverage that industrialized construction to the greatest extent possible. And then using the CLT where it has the best impact. And really, a CLT floor deck is a really competitive floor deck because if you think about trusses or other systems, you have so many pieces to set up that structure. But a CLT, it's just one and done, right? So there's a simplicity to it that made sense. And we were very mindful not to push more CLT onto the job than it could take.
I'm curious, you created a write-up, the Modly, on LinkedIn, and you talked about the VIA project. And then one of the things that was mentioned was the bathroom systems. Are you still going with the Bath Systems USA modular approach?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big part of this. And bath systems, we actually met bath system. We were already planning to use modular bathrooms. And if you think about the cost of a housing unit, your highest cost is going to be your kitchens and baths. And so it's not just enough to use CLT. You've got to combine that with other things to make the build out really efficient. We met Bath Systems at the Mass Timber Conference. They were the only modular bath manufacturer on the floor. And it just so happened that their system really works very well with CLT. So as you lay down a CLT floor deck, you'll have a topping. And the bath system unit requires a topping as well. So uh, you can use that topping to level out the floor, and then it pairs very well with it mates very well with the bow system. So those two things kind of made a lot of sense. And in terms of the aesthetics that we were trying to go for, we really wanted to go for as high end a finish as we could in the bathrooms, and then use the CLT as kind of the ceiling feature, and then keep everything else as simple as we could make it.
That's gonna be beautiful. We came across that exhibitor table at the International Mass Timber Conference too. Ricardo, I believe, is the
Yeah, Ricardo
owner.
Shanti, yeah, he's
Yeah,
great.
a
Yeah,
super cool guy. Gotta
yeah,
give a shout out to Ricardo. But
yeah,
yeah, no, their bass system, their wet wall system it's stunning. I mean,
yeah, it
it's
really
like
is.
European finishes, so you have very big square tiles, and it just looks, I'm sure the quality is there, don't get me wrong, but it looks stunning and very, very high end to where you're like, "Hey, what is this price?" And then they tell you like, "You're kidding me. Let's
Right.
get a couple of them going."
Yes.
Me and Brady were talking about him. He's like, "Hey, talk to us, when you're doing maybe 10, 20, 50 plus unit projects." We were still working on like a duplex, triplex, quadplex system, but they're very high on our radar. So that was cool that you're going to actually put it into the real world, into a real project.
Yeah, and that's I think that's an example of how industrialized construction can really help bring value to a developer. So you've really got to focus on these value added things, and if you can figure out a relationship with we call them OEMs, original equipment manufacturer. These are people that buy things like tile and bathtubs and fixtures and panels directly from the source. So an OEM, it's really like a tier one. They get they have relationships to the mills if they're making CLT. If you're making a bathroom, you're buying tile from the plant itself. You're not buying them retail from a distributor. You go and get the plant price because you can actually consume that much product, right? Um, so that's a way to get the benefits out. And one of the things we're trying to do is develop standardized designs with bathrooms, with bath system that other developers can use our designs. So we're being very conscious about the flexibility of those bathrooms, the utility of them, getting them as tight as they can be, but as nice as they can be, as impactful as they can be. And the idea is that once we get the prototyping done, because that is a cost, we'll sell that unit to the broader market, and they don't have to figure out. It makes the minimum order size lower, so you guys can probably just use one of our modular bathroom type threes, which are very high utility, and you don't have to worry about how does this work? How do I get the block to my architect? How much does this actually cost? Has Ricardo ever built one before? We've taken care of all of that for you, and that's really, I think that speaks to Tom and Stu and the rest of the Blue Crane's vision for this program, in that they've been very generous in being willing to share really costs that they've had to take on to do this. But that's really a wonderful part of the opportunity we have here, is to really for the broader market, not just for Blue Crane.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly generous point one. But point two, it's going to spur adoption across different developers, whether you're building 75, 80 unit complexes or 10, right? And then you can scale that across many different markets. Like, yeah, there's some specifics that you need to tailor for each one. But if you can take something that's 80% of the way there, it takes the risk and the cost premium to do due diligence out of these smaller developer hands. And they can say, hey, we already know within this degree of certainty what these systems are capable, what you need. And then, here's your price variability on the end. And I think that is something, especially to smaller developers, is going to be incredibly important. And so just kudos to you and to the Walton team for putting that out into the world, because the people that I talk to, that's one of the things that stops them from pursuing these types of systems. Is it's too new, it's too uncertainty, the risk is too high. And then like, if you have to spend a buttload of money to do your due diligence, like that's already coming off the top in your pro forma. And so to already be most of the way there is tremendous.
Yeah, it's really daunting, right? Margins are so tight. There's so much risk already. You're dealing with um, regulations, approvals, permitting, contracting, and now you've got to figure out how to do these brand new systems that nobody's really seen before. Everybody claims they work. You might have to hire very expensive engineers. You might have to take trips out to plants and it's a big commitment for a developer, even a big developer. So anything we can do to ease that and spur the adoption, we know that our unit costs will come down as more people use our kit, and that's reason enough, we think, to do this.
You were talking a little bit before we hit record about how impressive, to switch gears a little bit, but to keep on the same project, that you're, forgive me, I'm looking at the name VIA project, but you decided to use Sterling Solutions, structural CLT. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a big part of what I do. So instead of tying up the architectural or engineering team, there really is a lot of variables. When you go to a CLT plant, one of the wonderful things about a lot of these plants is, they can design and engineer the panel any way you want, right? You could have fir on the outside and pine on the inside. You can do however many layers. They can really engineer it to a fine degree. But when you're talking about affordable, there is such a thing as having too many variables. And what we really need are some easy to use standardized panels that will work with a grid layout on a typical, let's say it's a 3-story walk up. How would that work? So we spent a lot of time looking at layout grids. Uh, Sterling is I think the number one producer by volume of cross laminated timber in the world. Is this true? I believe this is true.
I believe so. Yeah. Don't, I'm 99.9% sure they got their footing with like big crane matting
That's
for like
right.
these massive equipments to kind of like lay down a floor, if you will, so they can drive across big mud bogs or things that you'd get stuck.
Yeah. And so they can offer some price certainty at the cost of selection, right? So you can have selection or you can have kind of cost. And so they're on the cost side. So for a small time developer, they really would like to know right from the bat, what can I do to get this as minimal as possible? And since these guys make so much of it, the trade-off is, look, if you're willing to work with our grid, we know we can get you this panel at this number. And I think for a lot of people that are trying to enter the market, I think that's a good place to start.
It's huge. And we've heard, I don't know what else to call it besides a little bit of a nightmare, a surprise nightmare. But you have some of these construction crews, or you have some of these crews that have done it before, and they almost like demand, hey, we want 7-ply, or we want to work with like this producer over here because we've done it in the past. But if you take a really, really cold, hard look, or, you read in between the lines, you can figure out, hey, actually, we only needed a 3 or 5-ply cross laminated timber here, and you are paying way more than you should have to that unsuspecting person who maybe just wants to drive the project across the finish line. Yeah, maybe they spent a little bit more money than they should, but you're starting to hear these things where there could be, the people like you, or these pre-construction managers, are so valuable because they know how to have those hard hitting questions.
Yes, and I have to say, even with Sterling's very competitive number, it still was not enough. I have to tell you. So the 3 and 5 ply distinction, that matters a lot.
Mhm.
And in order to actually get the project to work, we had to go a little bit further. And so where we even hybridized the thicknesses. So we only use 3 ply in over our kitchens and baths. And we conceal that in a rated assembly with a drop ceiling. And we need that drop ceiling anyway because we're getting venting out, we're getting lighting and electrical done. You're usually over the kitchen, and typically in the kitchen, you'll see a lower ceiling and then a higher ceiling the living areas. So the living areas use a 5-ply. The kitchen areas and bathroom areas use a 3-ply. We were able to realize 12% additional savings on the CLT order that way. And actually, I think we can even go higher than that. I think we can get more. And that has to do more with the layouts and the, how much repetition you want on the layouts. But that was a critical point, and we had to we fortunate enough to work with Aspect engineers out of Vancouver. They really are one of the pioneers of multifamily housing in CLT, and they helped us develop standardized details for this kit to transition that 3 and 5 ply. What kind of splines do we want to use? Where do the transitions work? How do we keep the waste on the panel layouts to a minimum so you're getting the most fiber per panel that you possibly can? And then we developed a series of guidance documents using these layouts that we gave to the architectural team. So as they came in and started working on the layouts, they had all the information they needed to be very efficient about doing the plans. The architects have a lot to do. Okay. Anything we can do, and I am one. So I'm not speaking against them or anything, but anything you can do to kind of allow them to focus on the real value added areas and less on things that have already been figured out, that really helps them deliver a higher quality project.
Yeah, for sure. So these guides, these resources, these systems, if you will, that you guys are putting out and developing, when do you think that they're going to be ready to share to the public?
Well, we want to be very careful. The proof is going to be in the pudding.
Mhm.
And that's when the unit actually gets built, the job is successful. You can put your eyes and ears and hands on it, right? You can walk into these things and go, "Oh, this is pretty good." I think my plan is over the next few weeks, we'll be writing probably some LinkedIn posts, maybe some social media posts that introduce some of the concepts here. But then we really want to validate the performance of the project. We're pulling in a group called ICG. They work with us on time studies, process engineering. So we want to look at the erection sequence on the site. We want to make sure that, we're factoring in erection costs. We want to make sure we involve all the lessons learned. You always learn things when you go into construction, and those learnings should be captured and and then fed into the next iteration, right? And it's really not complete as a study until you go through that full cycle. So we're going to share informally, so people know what we're talking about, probably on social media. But then once we're done, we'll have a complete data set that we can publish. We hope to work with Woodworks, Mass Timber Conference, et cetera, and really give a comprehensive review of what we're doing. But I don't want to get ahead of it because that performance data is just as important as the design, right? And we don't have that yet. But we'll be going into we will be going vertical on that project August 15th. That's when the panels will show up on site, and hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have a pretty complete story to tell.
So
That'll
with
be
the
good to
cap
hear and kind of see what the ending, you come up with. I did have
Happy
one.
endings.
Everyone likes a good happy ending.
Yeah.
For you talk about how like what comes down the road, you're always looking ahead. You're always looking to create this affordable housing. Will a person, let's get the walls up, let's get this thing enclosed and the proof is in the pudding. But so will a person be able to come to you, a developer, and say, "Hey, loved that project. Can I buy those designs from you?" And then could they plug and play that?
Yeah, and we want to be very clear. The designs are, we're working within the context of AEC. So we have copyright on the designs. That's the architect's copyright. What we want to give you is the system. The designs are yours. You can use the system, and it's flexible enough that you can come up with your own design. I mean, when you talk about 3-story walk up, people typically understand what that is. There may be a breezeway or a central corridor. Those are some options there, but everybody knows what that is. And so that's an easy one. So we want to go very systematically, typology by typology. But yes, and in fact, if developers want to reach out right now, if they're willing to look at it in this format, we're happy to share right now, directly. That's not a problem. It's just that when we publish, we want to make sure we have an opportunity to validate the data that we publish. That's all. But we're happy to share right now. There's really nothing hidden. Um, uh, Sterling's been fantastic as a partner, and if anybody, they're very. I'm happy to introduce anyone to them. I really I brag on them all the time. Bath System is a fantastic supplier. We've been working with um, the spline manufacturers. Some of our details we're happy to share on techniques and details that we've worked out to this date. So there's really everything we're trying to do as much kind of off the shelf stuff that is available in the broader market that any developer can implement easily and cost effectively. That's really our frame here.
Yeah. So knowing that the proof is going to be in the pudding, circa August and a little bit later, but if you were sharing an elevator for somebody and you've got 1 minute to tell them why they should consider building with CLT hybrid systems, what would you say to them?
Well, if you're interested in getting a kind of a cutting edge finish, um, and I'm gonna just we're talking mid 200s in that market, so well within reach. Obviously, there are adjustments, right, depending on where you are in the country, but we're in Northwest Arkansas in the mid 200s. It is a very tight labor market there. Doesn't seem like somewhere where you'd have a lot of scarcity, but actually, um, with all the construction they're doing, it's actually very hard to get things done, and everybody's seeing unexpected escalation, no matter what market you're in. So if you're looking at something in that range and you're interested in low rise, right now it's low rise. It'll be other forms later. Um, we think we have an answer for you. It's a good
And
one.
and was that building the mid 200s per square foot finished or selling like a per unit in the mid
That's
200,000?
construction.
Got it.
Like mid 200 a square foot.
Finished cost,
Construction cost. Yeah. Mhm.
construction cost. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you look around a cross section of where, the prices have risen to, and, you start getting up into $300-400 pretty quickly. If you want anything, custom and nicer, you're playing up there. So those are nice. Those are good numbers.
Yeah, we think it's a really competitive system right out of the gate. And you're talking about a higher finish. I mean, we have Hans Grohe fixtures in the bathrooms. We have Italian tile. We have
Right.
CLT ceilings. Wood
Right.
ceilings. I mean, it's amazing, right? That's a pretty nice unit, right?
Well, you're getting us excited. I know there's kind of, this more of a coined term, the missing middle. Not to say that this is dedicated for that, but there's this number where middle America and they're just having a lot of trouble affording these types of housing. And so this is just a massive problem. Thank you so much for coming on. We can't wait to see you at the International Mass Timber Conference. Well, excuse me, no, you're not going to that one, but we
Uh,
will see you at the Mass Timber Group Summit coming up in Denver, right?
yes, correct. I'll be there.
Sterling's going to be there, so you can say hi to Michaela and everything. But before we ask our last question, where can people find and connect with your organization?
Sure. If you'd like to reach out, you can find me at info.modly, MODLY, at gmail.com. And also check out my LinkedIn profile. There's a Modly page, MODLY, or look for Fouad Khalil. Look at my LinkedIn page, reach out. I'm happy to talk to you at any time.
Well, I appreciate it. And you do go by Foo, that's right?
That's right. Yeah.
All right, Foo. And for people, if they want to type that in, Fouad is Fouad, last name Khalil, Khalil. Your LinkedIn will pop right up. And for our final question, if you have a magic wand and you could change one thing in the industry, anything you want, what would it be and why?
I'd really like us to do a lot more R&D that was focused on the problems that people are dealing with right now. I think we do some R&D, but a lot of it is maybe not as targeted to that kind of missing middle. And I'd like to see more excitement about that. I know it doesn't seem very glamorous, but it is actually very cool to try and figure out innovative ways to bring higher quality construction to that segment. So we need as much R&D as we can get, and I'm very grateful for the Softwood Lumber Board and the USDA Forest Service for doing this. And I hope there's a lot more of it in the years to come. We need as much as we can get.
And one last thing to add, I believe, this is happening. We've found another story with a Cutler Development. They're a smaller development company in Des Moines, Iowa, and they are doing this hybrid mass timber model, and they're getting it to pencil right now. They're on their second one. If anybody's interested, please go to the Mass Timber Group show on YouTube. Check out that new podcast. And I think that was released last week, but you'll see it. It's one of our freshest ones. But again, this was awesome, Fu. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.